who always causes a bit of a divide in the nation. Yes. Meghan Markle, right? What has she done now?
Who is it that always seems to divide the nation? Who is it that can appear to do nothing at all and yet still ignite columns of newsprint, hours of television debate, and endless rivers of online speculation? It is Meghan Markle, of course. Ever since she stepped into the royal spotlight, she has lived under an unrelenting magnifying glass. Every detail of her life scrutinized, celebrated, condemned, or dissected. And once again, the Duchess of Sussex finds herself at the center of a storm. A storm not of gossip over her fashion choices or her interviews, but one that cuts deeper, to the very heart of royal tradition itself. What has she done now? Or, more precisely, what detail has surfaced now that threatens to unravel the perfect fairy tale she and Prince Harry so carefully constructed for the world? The story began innocently enough, with an announcement polished to perfection. On June 4th, 2021, the world was told that Meghan and Harry had welcomed a daughter. She was given the name Lilibet Diana, a name chosen with deliberate symbolism, blending Queen Elizabeth II's childhood nickname with the eternal memory of the late Princess Diana. The press adored the moment. Headlines hailed it as a continuation of the royal saga. Photographs, carefully curated, showed the Sussexes' smiling little girl lying on grass, framed by sunlight, wrapped in warmth. It was painted as the next chapter in a modern royal fairy tale, one where love triumphed and tradition bent gracefully to meet the couple's new Californian lifestyle. But history has a way of demanding more than pictures and words. Royal history, in particular, thrives on transparency, ritual, and proof. For centuries, the legitimacy of heirs has rested not only on bloodlines, but on open processes meant to silence doubt. And in that world, secrecy is never silence, it is suspicion. This time, the contradiction did not come from a gossip column or an anonymous source. It came from something colder, harder, less forgiving. Paperwork, a document meant to confirm a truth, instead opened the door to questions so sharp they cut through the polished facade, exposing cracks that could, if left unanswered, shake the monarchy itself. Meghan herself later spoke candidly about her health. In interviews, she revealed that she had suffered from postpartum preeclampsia, a condition in which new mothers experience high blood pressure and protein in their urine after giving birth. It is dangerous, life-threatening even, leading to seizures or worse if misdiagnosed. Her voice trembled as she admitted the ordeal, describing it as a life-or-death scare. And on the surface, her honesty about the complications seemed genuine, humanizing and relatable to women everywhere. But it also planted a seed. If such a dramatic health scare had truly occurred, where was the medical record to confirm it? Where was the transparency demanded by history when it came to royal children? Almost as soon as the announcement was made, keen observers began noticing discrepancies. Researchers and online commentators examined the public records of California, where the birth had supposedly taken place. And what they found, or failed to find, sparked whispers of unease. Some claimed the records appeared incomplete. Others pointed out that when requests were formally made, what surfaced did not align with expectations. In a monarchy where succession depends on the clarity of lineage, paperwork riddled with anomalies is not a minor mistake. It is a fracture. And fractures in royal bloodlines have, throughout history, erupted into full-blown crises. Why does it matter? Because 4 conditions have always defined whether a royal child is considered legitimate in the line of succession. First, the parents must be legally married. Second, the marriage must be recognized by the Church of England. Third, the child must be conceived naturally. And fourth, perhaps most crucially, the baby must be born from the mother's body, with the event publicly verified and recorded by trusted medical professionals. These are not modern inventions but ancient safeguards, designed to prevent chaos over who inherits the throne. They were once reinforced by rituals. The official easel placed outside Buckingham Palace signed doctors' notices, public confirmations meant to leave no doubt. But with Meghan and Harry, critics argue, these safeguards evaporated. There was no easel, no official medical signatures, no statements from trusted British institutions. Instead, the world was expected to accept carefully worded press releases, staged photographs, and, most importantly, paperwork that didn't quite add up. The deeper one looked, the stranger it became. A screenshot of Lilibet's birth certificate circulated online, showing a numerical code. At first glance, it seemed like any other legal form, but eagle-eyed observers noticed something alarming. The state code printed on the certificate read 105. And yet, according to official government charts, California's code is 104. Code 105 does not belong to California at all. It belongs to Colorado. For ordinary families, a mismatched number might be dismissed as a clerical oversight. But for royals, for the seventh in line to the throne of England, a misprinted number is not a typo. It is a dagger of doubt, sharp enough to pierce centuries of tradition. Social media erupted. Fans shared side-by-side comparisons of state charts, highlighting how 104 had always meant California. Commentators demanded answers. If the certificate carried 105, then had it been issued in the wrong state entirely? Or worse, was it not valid at all? When investigators formally requested the birth record from California's Vital Records Office, the reply was blunt: no record found. Instead of a birth certificate, they received what is called a certificate of no public record. In other words, as far as the state was concerned, there was nothing to confirm that the child had been born there. For a royal child, that is unprecedented. Every baby before, from princes to distant cousins, had their details confirmed, sealed in ink for the public to see. But for Meghan and Harry's daughter, there was silence, or worse, the suggestion of non-existence in the official system. The more people looked, the more tangled the story became. Then came the revelation about the doctor listed on the certificate, Dr. Melissa Drake. She was an obstetrician tied to the birth announcement. Yet within days of Lilibet's supposed delivery, she closed her medical practice. She released a statement saying she needed to focus on her health and her family. Innocent enough at first glance, but online sleuths quickly dug deeper. They discovered that her husband ran a fertility clinic. The timing became fuel for speculation. Was this coincidence? Or was there more to the story than the announcement allowed? The speculation spread like wildfire. Memes compared the saga to the plot twists of television dramas. Theories exploded across platforms. Some whispered that surrogacy had been used, hidden behind layers of secrecy. Others claimed the baby was adopted. A few insisted it was all a deliberate cover-up. What united all these theories was not necessarily truth, but the demand for clarity. Because when California issues a certificate of no public record, and when the codes point to another state entirely, what exactly is the truth? The royal family's silence only fanned the flames. Buckingham Palace refused to comment, directing all inquiries back to the Sussexes. And the Sussexes themselves never once addressed the code mismatch or the missing record. Their silence was deafening. And in today's world, silence is never neutral. It is interpreted as guilt. Every unanswered question became a meme. Every refusal to respond spawned another thread of speculation. What began as one misprinted number had become a full-blown institutional crisis. To understand the gravity, one must look back at Archie's birth in 2019. Born at Portland Hospital in London, his arrival already looked unconventional. There was no official easel displayed outside Buckingham Palace. No public signatures by doctors. At the time, people brushed it off as Harry and Meghan modernizing royal traditions, trying to shield their child from intrusive rituals. But with Lilibet, the pattern became impossible to ignore. This was not modernization, critics argued. This was opacity. And opacity, in royal terms, breeds only one thing: doubt. Doubt is dangerous. Throughout history, disputed births have ignited wars, toppled monarchs, and fractured dynasties. Today, the stakes may not involve swords and armies, but they are no less significant. They involve legitimacy, credibility, and the trust of a public already divided about the very existence of monarchy. Archie is listed as sixth in line to the throne. Lilibet is listed as seventh. If the paperwork does not meet the rules, their place could be challenged. And when questions about succession emerge, history proves they never fade quietly. The final twist came when one determined investigator decided speculation wasn't enough. They filed an official request, complete with fees, dates, and names. They wanted proof, and the reply they received was chilling in its simplicity. No record found. Instead of confirmation, California's Vital Records Office issued a certificate of no public record. In legal terms, that meant the state itself had nothing to show. No file. No official recognition. Nothing. For Meghan and Harry's daughter, a child presented as the future of the Windsor bloodline, the paper trail simply stopped, and that is where the drama lingers, in a silence so loud it echoes. What happened in those days of June 2021? Was it merely a clerical error, a misprinted number, an unfortunate accident that spiraled into global speculation? Or was it something more deliberate? Something hidden in plain sight, concealed behind polished announcements and carefully staged photographs? The truth remains locked away, unanswered. But one thing is certain. In a monarchy built on transparency of birth, the absence of proof is not absence alone. It is a shadow that grows darker with every unanswered question, threatening to consume the fairy tale entirely. It all began with a single number. A number so small, so easy to miss that most people would never have noticed. Yet once it was spotted, it became the spark that turned whispers into thunder. Fans online shared screenshots of birth certificates and government charts, highlighting the curious case of California's state code. For decades, it had been 104. Solid, consistent, unquestionable. Yet, on Lilibet's certificate, the code read 105. At first, skeptics dismissed it as an overzealous conspiracy theory. But screenshots of official documents, cross-checked with government resources, showed the same truth again and again. 104 was California. 105 was Colorado. The code mismatch was no imagination. It wasn't speculation plucked from thin air. It was right there, printed in black and white on the most important document in the life of a royal child. Not satisfied with screenshots and online chatter, one determined investigator decided to go further. They picked up the phone. According to their own meticulous notes, the call lasted exactly 25 minutes and 45 seconds. On the other end of the line was a staff member from California's Vital Records Office. What they said would send shivers down the spine of anyone who had brushed the matter off as nothing. California always uses 104, the staff member confirmed. It has never been 105. It was not a rumor, not a misunderstanding. It was official. The mismatch was real. The paperwork did not align. And in the world of succession, where paperwork is destiny, that single inconsistency cast a shadow across the monarchy. But that was only the beginning. Because once you start digging into royal births, you realize every record is not just paperwork. It is precedent. The investigator, determined to compare, turned their eyes toward Archie's birth. Through the Freedom of Information Act, they wrote to Parliament, requesting confirmation of his birthplace at Portland Hospital in London. The response was another shock, one that deepened the mystery. Parliament explained that it was not a hospital and therefore had no ability to verify anything. Instead, they directed the request to Buckingham Palace. But here lay the problem. The palace is not bound by FOIA at all. Unlike government bodies, it does not have to respond, does not have to reveal, does not have to open its doors. Which meant, once again, another dead end. At every official checkpoint, the answer was the same. California said no record. The UK bounced inquiries back to the palace. And the palace itself remained wrapped in silence, refusing to confirm, refusing to deny. For critics, this was not oversight. This was stonewalling. Every door closed, every answer withheld, every silence maintained only added to the suspicion. Comparisons to past royal births only intensified the scandal. When Prince George was born, the transparency was deliberate and overwhelming. A ceremonial easel displayed outside Buckingham Palace bore the signatures of medical staff. Proof meant to erase any doubt about the legitimacy of the heir. But with Harry and Meghan's children, those rituals vanished. There was no easel, no signatures, no doctor's note in public view. Instead, there were carefully worded announcements, glossy photographs, and certificates with details that raised eyebrows. To some, Harry and Meghan framed these changes as modernization. to protect their children from the archaic theater of royal rituals. But fans online weren't convinced. They insisted it wasn't modernization at all. It was concealment. And concealment in royal history has always carried a price. Concealment breeds suspicion. And suspicion in matters of succession is like striking a match in a room filled with fuel. The silence did not extinguish the fire. It ignited it. And so, speculation began to swirl about motive. Why would the records be unclear? Why would the details be hidden? Some argued it was nothing more than clerical error, a minor mistake that nobody corrected out of embarrassment. But others pointed to something far more explosive. They drew lines between the doctor listed on the certificate, Dr. Melissa Drake, and her sudden decision to close her medical practice days after the birth. In her statement, she said she wanted to focus on her health and her family. Yet critics noticed that her husband ran a fertility clinic, and from that connection, theories about surrogacy erupted. Could it be that Meghan had not delivered the child herself? Could a surrogate have been involved, cloaked behind secrecy and official silence? Still others whispered about adoption, another possibility that would clash directly with the ancient rules of succession. If a royal child is not born of the mother's body, the claim to the throne becomes questionable. Every possibility, clerical error, surrogacy, adoption, was argued across forums, videos, and articles. And though each theory differed, they all stemmed from the same root: secrecy. Because in public perception, secrecy often matters more than fact. If institutions refuse to clarify, audiences will fill the silence themselves. And that is exactly what happened. Every unanswered question became a headline. Every missing piece of information became a hashtag. Viral TikToks dissected the documents frame by frame. Threads on Twitter tallied the oddities: the missing code, the vanishing doctor, the no record found notice from California. Memes mocked the situation mercilessly. One viral post compared the certificate to a passport for Paris coded for Peru. Another stitched together clips of commentators pointing out the forbidden titles printed on a U.S. certificate. Titles that technically belonged to a system across the ocean. Defenders of the Sussexes called it a witch hunt, an attempt to humiliate a couple who had already endured so much. But others argued transparency was non-negotiable. One TikTok with millions of views asked a question so simple, so unanswerable, it became the center of the debate. If George, Charlotte, and Louis had their births confirmed on palace easels, why not Harry's children? The comment section exploded. Exactly, one user wrote. If it's all real, why hide it? In the digital age, side-by-side comparisons shared across platforms carry more weight than centuries of palace silence. In that world, the monarchy was losing the narrative. And behind the scenes, whispers grew louder. Commentators claimed palace officials were quietly uneasy but unwilling to address the controversy. To confirm or deny would open the door to legal and constitutional headaches, they feared. If even one succession rule was broken, if even one condition wasn't met, it could trigger a domino effect. The monarchy has weathered scandals before: affairs, divorces, feuds. But this was different. This was about legitimacy, the most sacred foundation of the crown itself. Some drew historical parallels. The abdication crisis of 1936, when Edward VIII chose love over duty, leaving the monarchy shaken to its core. Others recalled earlier centuries, when disputed births ignited civil wars and dynastic struggles that scarred England forever. Historians warned that questions of legitimacy never vanish. They echo across generations, staining reputations, undermining trust, eroding institutions piece by piece until nothing remains unshaken. Peace until nothing remains unshaken. The ripple effect extended beyond gossip. Broadcasters debated whether they should reference the controversy in royal documentaries. British morning shows questioned if the monarchy could withstand another credibility hit after decades of scandal. In America, the coverage focused on the legal angle. If official American records couldn't confirm what the palace insisted was true, what then? Law experts were called in. They noted that succession isn't just ceremonial, it is constitutional. A discrepancy unresolved could, in theory, one day trigger parliamentary intervention. And if Parliament is dragged into questioning the line of succession, the monarchy itself trembles. The financial stakes were not small. Analysts pointed out that the monarchy generates billions annually in tourism, merchandise, media rights, and cultural influence. Anything that undermines public trust puts that income at risk. The monarchy isn't just tradition, it's an economy. And if the paperwork scandal caused even a fraction of that trust to falter, the consequences would ripple far beyond Buckingham Palace. Already, polls showed that younger generations were less attached to the institution than their parents. This controversy, trivial as it might appear on the surface, risked becoming the lightning rod for deeper cultural shifts. Meanwhile, the internet kept the story alive with relentless energy. TikTok creators dramatized the "no record found" notice with reenactments. YouTube commentators dissected every angle, every date, every inconsistency. Twitter debates spiraled into thousands of comments about transparency, privilege, and accountability. It was no longer about Meghan or Harry personally. It was about the monarchy's refusal to provide the same transparency it had always demanded from others. If it's all legit, then show the paperwork. That single tweet, retweeted hundreds of thousands of times, crystallized the issue. Simple, direct, impossible to ignore. Because in the monarchy, paperwork is not just ink and paper. Paperwork is proof. Proof is legitimacy. And legitimacy is survival. Without it, the crown crumbles. When the dust settled, one truth remained unavoidable. The questions weren't going away. For Meghan and Harry, silence had been their shield, a way of controlling the narrative, of protecting their children. But now, silence looked less like protection and more like a weapon turned against them. In the absence of answers, every gap was filled with suspicion. Every silence became evidence. Every mystery became a scandal. And unlike other royal controversies, this wasn't about personal choices. It wasn't about interviews or books or family feuds. This was about the line of succession itself, about whether the crown rests on foundations of truth or foundations of secrecy. Commentators warned that the monarchy had stepped into dangerous territory. For centuries, it had relied on transparency to silence doubt. Now, by refusing to provide it, it had invited the very storm it sought to avoid. What happens next? That is the question echoing across headlines, comment sections, and whispers in Parliament corridors. If a single number, 104 versus 105, can spark the biggest royal scandal in decades, imagine what else could surface. Imagine what happens if more inconsistencies are found, if more paperwork refuses to align, if more doctors vanish into silence. In an age where one screenshot can travel faster than any palace statement, how long can the monarchy remain quiet? For now, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry stand at the center of the storm, polished, smiling in photographs, but increasingly cornered by a narrative they cannot control. Their children, innocent, blameless, are placed in the middle of a debate about legitimacy, their futures discussed by strangers online. And the royal family, an institution that survived wars, abdications, and scandals, now faces a new kind of crisis. One not of swords or battles, but of paperwork. One where destiny is determined not by blood spilt on battlefields, but by numbers typed onto forms. The fairy tale, it seems, doesn't match the documents. And in the monarchy, that mismatch is not small. It is everything. So, here we stand, with a mystery unresolved and a crown shadowed by doubt. A simple code, a missing record, a vanishing doctor. These details may seem small, but history teaches us that it is always the smallest cracks that bring down the tallest walls. And this time, the crack runs straight through the heart of the crown. And that leaves the question no one wants to ask out loud, but everyone is thinking, if the paperwork doesn't prove what the palace insists, then what does the monarchy rest upon? If the monarchy cannot provide clarity on its own line of succession, how much longer can it command trust? The next chapter of this story hasn't been written yet. But one thing is certain. When it comes, it will shake not just Meghan and Harry, but the institution itself. Because in royal history, unanswered questions don't fade. They grow. And in this case, they grow in the very shadow of the throne. This is Crown and Controversy, unraveling the royals one scandal at a time. Don't forget to subscribe.